I'm going to give, actually, I'm not going to talk about RLTO. I'm going to leave that to my partner here, David Orr. And I actually do want to thank David Orr, who I'm delighted to be on this podium with tonight, who really was the instigator, the provocateur, if you will, for the creation of this organization back in the day. And that's actually what I'd like to do, especially in light of recent events. I think it's important for us to have a sense of history of an organization, put a historical perspective on it. So I'm going to spend my time now just kind of taking you through kind of a brief history of where this all came from and how we got started. Lawyers Committee for Better Housing began when a small band of energetic, mostly youthful lawyers came together at the suggestion of the then recently elected alderman of the 49th Ward, David Orr, to address concerns raised by tenants, neighboring residents, and community organizations about the condition of several local multifamily buildings. Each attorney in our cadre was assigned a building as his or her client, and was responsible for learning the facts and developing strategies to improve the building conditions. We would meet on a monthly basis with Sue Stewart, the alderman's then chief administrative assistant, and later first executive director for Citizen Utility Board, CUB, and we would share with her what we had learned about the buildings to which we were each assigned. We quickly found that a multitude of factors were usually involved in the deterioration of these critical resources that were home to many of our lower and moderate income residents. Building code violations, utility bill arrears, property tax delinquency, poor management. Is this sounding familiar? Inadequate tenant screening and absentee ownership were among the key indicators of a building in decline. This led to the development of an early warning system, which was developed with the assistance of a graduate student at UIC, Jean Pogge. Jean Pogge later became, among other things, she became the president of Woodstock Institute, an executive vice president at Shore Bank, and now is the president and CEO of a large Canadian charity. This became the basis for the Neighborhood Early Warning System, later operated under the auspices of the Center for Neighborhood Technology. Because all the buildings were in housing court, as Mark mentioned, we worked closely with the Corporation Counsel's office, in addition to the residents of the buildings and local neighborhood organizations. Eventually, we found that more aggressive engagement was sometimes necessary, and we began intervening in the proceedings through receivership. Our initial successes and efforts were brought to the attention of the public through articles in the Metro section of the Tribune by a local reporter at the time, Stevenson Swanson, who did some great reporting on local issues back in the day in the Tribune. At the same time, the Amico Development Corporation that Mark mentioned was partnering with ResCorp, which at that time was an affordable housing developer, actually a for-profit affordable housing developer, developing apartment buildings in the north of Howard area of Rogers Park. Marty Stern, who's now a senior managing director at CBRE, saw our work as a complement to their efforts and paved the way for a sizable grant from Amico Foundation, which enabled us to go full-time as an independent public interest law organization. The upper story of David's office became our first official office in 1982. I understand from Herb Ziegeldorf, apparently that building is no longer there, sadly. I still recall the day, though, that I redecorated my office with a fresh coat of paint and a fresh new volunteer, recently graduated from law school, Matt Kennelly, now a distinguished federal court judge. Matt was not only a volunteer lawyer with LCBH, but has served as president of our board for several years. My first hire was an office manager / administrative assistant / secretary, Irene Mitchell. I will tell you that over the course of my entire term as executive director, we were never larger than an office of 3. That was as large as we got. And so it always it warms my heart always to see the robust staffing and resources that Lawyers Committee for Better Housing now has. As for the staff attorney position, the choice also became self-evident when a lawyer living in Hyde Park responded to the job listing with a cover letter expressing her delight and amazement that such a position existed and describing it as her, quote, dream job. During our initial interview, Barbara Grau's enthusiasm and commitment to the housing field became quickly apparent. Barbara worked diligently to improve the lives of the many people whose difficult circumstances she struggled to address, and was a tireless advocate on their behalf throughout her tenure with LCBH. Her life was sadly cut short, but her work at LCBH and Cook County Legal Assistance Foundation is a testament to a life passionately and well lived. Her memory is very well served by the award made annually by this organization. During the years that I was executive director, we kept one foot firmly planted in the communities of Rogers Park and Edgewater, where we dealt on a case-by-case basis with the issues of safe and decent affordable housing, utility shutoffs, wrongful eviction of tenants. These were some of the manifestations of neglect and disinvestment that led to significant losses of precious multifamily housing units and the undermining of the fabric of our community. But key to our efforts was also developing coalitions with community-based organizations throughout Chicago to get at the root problems that plagued our community. Our advocacy at the city, county, and state levels of government led to model programs including the Tax Reactivation Program, which transferred tax delinquent multifamily properties to nonprofit developers, the Housing Abandonment Prevention Program providing court-appointed receivers with funds to repair buildings, and a city housing trust fund financed by the developers of Presidential Towers, who had initially received a waiver on their obligation to include low and moderate income housing units in their then new high-rise building downtown. Our advocacy also led to what these days we describe as a slap suit, when Earl Nemeth and his real estate company Create Inc. sued LCBH, the Rogers Park Tenants Committee, and several of us individually, including David, myself, Barbara, Audrey Lyon, my successor as executive director, sued us for defamation, libel, and slander. Our defense was as simple as it proved successful. We were telling the truth about the disrepair of his buildings and his failure to return security deposits. It's a tribute to my successors, Audrey Lyon, Julie Ansell, Kathy Clark, and now Cheryl Lawrence, and their staffs, volunteers, and the many supporters that LCBH has grown to become a mature, dynamic organization playing a vital role in the legal arena for one of the most important issues we confront as a society. I want to conclude my remarks tonight with a reminder that the early years of our work as a community-based, mission-driven organization were conducted during a national administration that saw government not as the solution to our problem, but the problem itself. And in fact, those were the words that were used in the first inaugural of the president at that time. This included policy proposals that often cut against the fundamental goals of groups like LCBH and other social justice organizations. I'm reminded of a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." While events of the past week were certainly disheartening for many of us, we must all remain steadfast in the critical work that we do every day, and that particularly you're doing at Lawyers Committee every day, to increase and preserve safe, affordable, and accessible housing for all those that live in Chicago.